Well, thank you so much for having me here today. And if you could just indulge me for a minute, I'd love to see a show of hands. How many of you have been asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? That's pretty much everybody. And at the cost of sounding like a millennial, how many of us gave that delightful and passionate answer? A doctor, an astronaut, an engineer, a firefighter, dancers, the next Ronaldo. Okay, quite a few hands. So did I. And I'm sorry, Gen Z, I'm still learning your aspirations. But how do we feel about that same question today? Are we still giving those delightful and passionate responses when we're asked, what are your plans after college? And what's your next job or role going to be? And my absolute favorite, where do you see yourself 5 years down the line? That annoying HR interview question that some of us would have faced. Are we still as passionate? Or do we end up feeling anxious and with a little bit of anxiety? Now, most of these questions are asked by well-intentioned people who assume that we know the answers. But in reality, most of us don't. And that's okay. A surprising bit of research from Harvard showed that between the ages of 2 and 5, children ask 40,000 questions. By the time they've hit high school, this number has dropped drastically by 50%. Even our friends at NASA say 98% of 5-year-olds are considered geniuses under divergent thinking. But these same kids, by the time they hit 25, 2%. Because somewhere along the way, society told us to stop asking and start proving. So when these questions are asked, it feels like a test, something we must give the right answer to, something that has to be inspiring and, intellectual. But the thing that will guide us through is not clarity. It's actually the habit of curiosity. Because brands are not built by one big moment of questioning. Leaders don't grow by asking one challenging, bold question. They grow when they keep asking, keep learning, and keep reapplying, even when it feels boring. So yes, curiosity is a habit. And curiosity and consistency must work together. Now, I'd like to walk you through some of the examples that I have learned in my marketing and brand life that probably gave me this clarity. To start off, when I was a young brand manager working across multiple brands and attending different marketing meetings, a lot of them would start off on a very similar tone. What's the next big idea for our marketing launch? What's the next big disruption that we're going to do? And how are we going to beat our competitor? And these questions would energize and charge up the teams, right? They'd make us feel like, yeah, we can break the brand guidelines. Let's create something new. Let's make a disruptive idea. Let's reinvent the wheel. But nothing stuck. We saw amazing sales results from one campaign, but deep reds from another. Brilliant conversational virality on one creative, silence on another. Because our customers could not pinpoint what we stood for. Because every time we showed up as something different. This is when I learned about consistency. Because clarity is great, but it's fleeting. A clear goal, bold idea is amazing. But if we don't act on it repeatedly, it doesn't build, it doesn't accumulate. Because brands, much like people, are not built by one brilliant moment. Instead, it's what they do repeatedly, again and again and again, that defines their story. So again, It's consistency over clarity. In another instance, I was asked to go ahead and unlock the KSA market. A market that was fairly large for the business, an intriguing and mysterious one. And as I was about to enter that market, I was given a set of clear messages. The competitor there is weak. Their product is inferior. And our customers are not those customers. Pretty clear, very straightforward messaging. But maybe it was my researcher background, or maybe it was my stubbornness to not take things at face value, that I ended digging deeper. So why were customers going to that competitor? What is it that we were missing? And how are we so sure that the customers don't overlap? Now, I'm not going to bore you all with the details of what all I asked and how much I challenged and pushed back, and how deep that rabbit hole actually went. But safe to say that what we learned shattered a myth. Yes, those customers were loyal to the competitor because the competitor offered a value and a convenience that was unmatched. It had built itself as a brand that offered belonging and community and pride in the local Saudi culture. We were the shiny disco ball. Beautiful, alluring, exciting, but distant. We hadn't made the effort of connecting with the local culture and customer. Curiosity helped unlock that. It gave us the insight into going back and redrafting our strategy and coming back with a far better plan of making ourselves more culturally relevant and meaningful in that audience. And finally, another moment that shaped my journey was when I was offered a promotion into a completely different department, one that on paper I was not fit for. I absolutely had no experience in this domain, zero technical skills, and to top it off, I was supposed to be leading a team of technical experts. Again, felt nervous, shaky, and I could have played it safe. I could have chosen to stay within the typical corporate ladder. And if any of you get the reference to this, that's brilliant. But I'm guessing by now, you know how the story goes. I chose to be curious. And I chose to ask a question few leaders are willing to ask. Can you teach me? And most of the time, this question was asked to my juniors and fellow team members, most of whom were caught off guard and surprised, amused, and a little unsure that why was a leader asking them. But I didn't give up. Every day I showed up with the intention to ask and learn. And willing to admit that I didn't have the clarity yet. But interestingly, I grew because I didn't pretend to have the clarity. Because that's a common trap that a lot of us fall into, especially as we rise up the ranks. That, as leaders, we must have all the answers. Because not knowing equals not capable. Yeah? But why am I telling all of this to you guys? Because at some point, either you will be asking or you would have been asked, what's your next passion? What are you going to do next? Have you thought about your goals? And most importantly, don't start until you're clear. But clarity is overrated, and it's rare, and it changes with time and experience. But what we can do today and every day is to find that curiosity. Ask the questions that people assume they already know. Be curious about people, not just projects. But most importantly, be curious about yourself. What drives you? What drains you? And you will find that that too changes with time and experience. I'm going to leave you with these 3 thoughts. Because today, when I work with founders and leaders and brands and senior professionals across the system, I repeatedly tell them, keep asking, keep challenging, and keep pushing. Let's never assume that we've reached the end point, because there isn't one. If you wait for clarity to find you before you've even started, you will freeze. But if we allow ourselves to be curious, it will lead us to the clarity that we're seeking. Because it's not that one moment of like that one brilliant clarity that defines our story. It's the hundreds of questions we've asked along the way. Thank you.